We greet you once again from ministry here in Santa Rosa, California, on this Holy Sabbath day, the seventh day of the week, the 28th of July, 2018. Revelation 14:1 is dedicated to correcting the false teachings that has flooded the Christian world of today. We are also involved in studies into areas that have been hidden from us in the past, but has come to light as we progress along history. When new things come up, current events that tell us that we link to what was prophesied thousands of years ago by the prophets of God. But we've been specifically studying, researching into the descendants of the Fijian people. We are particularly interested in that because of our background as Fijians, indigenous of the Fiji Islands. So we've been doing studies in the past, and there's been some sessions, I think 2 sessions in the past regarding this topic. Today we will continue. As new lights come into view, we would like to share that to the world. So today, we will, most of what we'll cover today has already been touched on, but we need to keep refreshing it so that as new lights come up, they just fall into place like a jigsaw puzzle. So today, our topic is Descendants of Javan. We've heard of that name, Javan, from Genesis chapter 10. We the descendants of Javan, the Jewish descendant tree, and also the 10 lost tribes. We've covered all these in bits in the past 2 studies that we've already covered, and we would like to bring that back in order to bring in the new light that we've come across. So today is the 28th of July, 2018. So if we will just go back to the verse in Genesis chapter 10, verses 4 and 5, which talks about Javan. It says in verse 4, and the sons of Javan, and his sons are Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Those are the 4 sons of Javan that were in Babel. You know, they were the same generation as Nimrod, the son of Cush. And Nimrod was a descendant of Ham, the second son of Noah. So these are the 4 sons of Javan. Verse 5 says, by these 4 were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands. So the isles of the Gentiles were divided amongst these 4. Remember, from Babel, everyone was dispersed, so they covered the whole earth. But in particular, the 4 sons of Javan, they were given the isles of Gentiles. So they had to go out into the ocean. So remember that. The 4 sons of Javan were allocated the isles of the Gentiles. The other verse that we had studied in the past regarding the ancestry of the Fijian race is Isaiah chapter 66, verse 19. Isaiah lived over 1,000 years after Javan, after Javan's four sons. So 1,000 years later, the prophet Isaiah is saying this. If you read about the whole chapter of 66, Isaiah chapter 66, you'll find out that in Jerusalem, by this time they've settled in the promised land of Canaan, and Jerusalem had been made the capital of the southern kingdom. By this time, too, the two kingdoms have, the nation of Israel had divided up into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom, which comprised 10 tribes, and the two southern two tribes in the south. There was called Judah. So, for the southern tribe, things were happening in there that people were turning away from God. They were more interested in the gods of the surrounding nations. They intermarried with pagan worshippers that surrounded them. And this is what was happening. For those people who wanted to keep the God that their forefathers worshipped, they were persecuted. And this is what happened. It's recorded here in verse 19. And it'll say, and I will set a sign among them. This group of people that wanted to stay with Jehovah God. And I will send those that escape of them, those people that are being persecuted in Jerusalem itself, have to escape in order to save their lives. They will escape unto the nations, to Tarshish, these are the islands, Pool and Lud that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the isles afar off. Remember, Javan and his four sons, they were given the isles of the Gentiles. So some of these people that were persecuted in Jerusalem were told to go to the isles of the Gentiles, where Javan's descendants have already left for. They are now there. They left 1,000 years earlier, and Isaiah, the prophet that's living now, knew about that. He knew about Javan and his four sons, and he knew that they were given the islands far off. Read what it says. And Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame. So these people that are already occupying those isles have not really heard about God and what God has done. Neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. So the people that are already occupying the isles, that left from Babel, they are not aware of King David and the temple in Jerusalem, the pride of the Jewish nation. They are not aware of that. They are not aware of the crossing of the Red Sea. See, these are all of God's glory that has to be taken to these people so that they know they are still worshiping Jehovah, the same God that they were worshiping when they left 1,200 years earlier from the plains of Shinar. They're still worshiping it, but they are not aware of the current events. They're not aware of Abraham, their descendant, because Abraham lived 1,000 years after they had left. So these are the glory of God that needs to be taken to these people to update them with the current events. We should be aware of what's happening right now. We should be interested as students of prophecy of what is happening right now. Our ancestors who came from Babel were not aware. So God intended these people that are running away from Jerusalem to take this message to them. So that was the second landing on the Isles of Fiji. We have heard from our parents, may matay ni lako-lako, may karua ni lako-lako, the second. The second one came directly from Jerusalem, and they are Jews. When the two kingdoms separated, the 10 tribes to the north and the 2 tribes in the south. It is the 2 tribes in the south that are the Jews. They call themselves the Jew. That's where the Jewish church came up. So this second landing were the direct descendants of the Jews of the southern kingdom. So they came in and updated those who were already on the island. There was no fighting. Why? Because they served the same God. When they came in, they brought in their God, their message, and they were accepted because it was the same God that the original settlers were worshipping to was the ones that these new settlers brought in. So they lived together and then they spread out throughout the islands. That was the second landing. The Jews directly from Jerusalem. And then we hear of these people. Javan, in Ezekiel chapter 27 verse 13, says Javan, Tubal, Meshach. These are all the sons of, who's the eldest son of Noah. They were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and the vessels of brass in thy market. So what were they known for? Javan, Tubal, and Meshach. We are not aware where these two went to, Tubal and Meshach. We know where Javan went to the Isles of the Gentiles. But these three, it says, they were the merchants. And they were the ones that were trading in Tyre. In Tyre. If you read Ezekiel chapter 27, it talks about, it's a lamentation about the city of Tyre. It was the city of trade. So verse 13 of chapter 27 says that Javan, what Javan is known for, he is a merchant, he is a trader, he is a businessman. So those 4 sons of his were all involved in business. That's why it says in the verse 19 and the other verse down here, then also and Javan, what were they doing? Going to and fro from Fiji, where they've settled, from the Solomons, from Australia, from New Zealand. All these were where they settled, the descendants of Javan. They went back to Tyre with their goods to go and trade, because they were merchants, they were business people. And Dan and Javan were going to and fro. So they not only left those, their original place to come down to the isles. Once they were here, they went forth, back and forth, back to Tyre in the Mediterranean to go and trade. They took their wares from here, traded it there, bought things from there and brought it back. So you see, they were merchants. So, if we will just quickly go through the timeline to help us put our thinking right. This was at Noah's flood, around 2500 BC, before Christ. Javan came in about 2200, about 300 years after the flood, when Javan appeared, and then his sons were here in around about 2000 BC, 2000 years before Christ, where his sons were. And that's where the first dispersion took place. Because they wanted to worship God, Nimrod did not want. Nimrod was the one who built the Tower of Babel. So they persecuted them. And God told them, go to the isles of the Gentiles. This is where it happened. About 2000 BC. 800 BC is when what we just talked about. The Jerusalem dispersion took place. So it was about 1,200 years after Javan's descendant left for the isles. 1,200 years later, these people. Another 200 years later were the 10 tribes. Remember, they went into idol worship, and the Assyrians came and took them captive. Remember the one thing, that when the nation apostatizes, everyone suffers in the nation. God punishes the whole nation as a nation. So when Assyria came and took them captive, they not only took the idol worshippers, they took God, those who were worshiping God, Jehovah, with them. Just like Daniel. When Nebuchadnezzar came over to Jerusalem and took them captive, they not only took the sinful people, they took those two who were worshiping God, Daniel and his group. So you see, that's the sin of the nation. Everyone will suffer. So that's what happened there in Jerusalem. In the 10 tribes. Assyria, that's the northern kingdom. So when they went, these people still wanted to worship the God they were. And they were told, there are some islands out in the oceans, far away. Go look for it. Javan and his children and his descendants are there. Not only that, the 2 tribes from Jerusalem left about 200 years ago. They are there also. Go and join them there. So that's when this took place, 600 years before Christ. So these are the 2 nations on a map, Judah and Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And you see Tyre is right up there. So our ancestors went all the way from the Pacific Ocean back to the Mediterranean and Tyre. That's where they were trading, right up there. You see, amazing. It's just unbelievable what these people were doing. They were traveling all over the world, trading. And then, with that in mind, think about that. We've come up to about 600 BC before Christ. But now, let's fast forward to 1800 AD. 1800 AD. This is what happened. If you want to look at the original text, you'll find it on this URL. If you can focus on that, so you can stop the video, copy that URL and put it in your browser. It'll bring you to the text where I brought this this documentation from. This is about John B. Williams, the U.S. consul to Fiji in 1847. It says, the incident, he was in New Zealand, based in New Zealand, no, in Fiji, but there was something that was happening in New Zealand. His area of responsibility covered New Zealand and Fiji. And it says, the incident was formally closed on 20th of August 1847, when Williams received from Andrew Sinclair the regrets of Her Majesty's government that he had been mistakenly implicated in the incitement of the Maoris. The Maoris did something to the British establishment in New Zealand. And this American John B. Williams was blamed for inciting that like a mutiny. But then it was found out later that it was not true. It was a false allegation. And so the Queen herself was apologizing to John Williams. And John Williams is now in Fiji. He is now ruling from Fiji as a U.S. consul to both New Zealand and Fiji. So with the native war over, that's in New Zealand, and his good character re-established, Williams returned to Fiji and his commercial interests. He bought the island of Nukulau at Laucala Bay, east of Suva. I just want to bring that up to take us back into our history in Fiji. Remember why Fiji was ceded to Great Britain? There was a burning that took place too right on this island. There was a burning. So they were told to pay for it, pay for the damage. But they couldn't pay. They didn't have the money. So that was the reason why Fiji was ceded. And what I'm trying to bring here is, you know, the original people who came, these are all descendants of Javan, those who settled the Maoris in New Zealand and the indigenous Fijians in Fiji. Can you see there's some sort of a setup going on? The same thing that happened in New Zealand, which John Williams was blamed for, is now took place too in Fiji, on the island of Nukulau. Somebody burnt the American consul there, and Fijians could not pay for it. So they ceded Fiji to Great Britain. That's exactly what happened. So what we should be understanding is that there is an attack on the indigenous population of the world, especially the descendants of Javan, the Maoris, the Fijians, the Solomons, Samoans, the Tongans. Look at what's happening in all these islands today, the Aborigines of Australia, Papua New Guinea. Things are happening to the indigenous population, the descendants of Javan, all over the place. What is happening? That should spark our mind from the records here and from the biblical records. These are the people who were told to go and occupy those far-off isles, the isles of the Gentiles. Now they've been plotted against. So this man now is stationed in Fiji on at Laucala, and he bought the island of Nukulau. This is what he says of the Fiji people. He was writing to his mother and his brother who were living in New Zealand. And this is what he said. The Fiji men's manners, customs, and habits are precisely what we read of in ancient Jews. He's looking at the Fijian, our ancestors during that time in the 1800s, and he says, whatever I read in the Bible about the Jews, I see right here with these people here. They are the descendants of the lost tribe of Israel. That's what, according to him, according to John B. Williams. They anoint the head and the body with sweet scented oils, wear the long beard. So this is what's recorded in the Bible that he's trying to link to what he is seeing, experiencing right there at Nukulau. They also circumcised as did the Jews. So the Fijians, you know, sometimes we think that the white man or the missionaries of the 1800s brought in circumcision, the teachings of circumcision. No. This man, when he went there, they were already being circumcised. Kids, small kids were running around and they were circumcised. Some of them have many wives as Solomon. See, he's linking it to the Bible. He is a Christian man. Enslaved men and women accordingly, as we read in the book of Solomon. So these are his observations about the Fijians that he with. But remember, he came and he's living amongst Fijians now. But what did the missionaries write about the Fijians? They said these Fijians are cannibals. If they were really cannibals, would he still be alive? Would he be writing this letter? No way. So there's a lot of lies, there's a lot of attack on the indigenous people of these islands, on the descendants of Javan. There's a lot of attack. And all this from that same URL, and it's right there at the bottom. Read them. This is this is what he said. Our first mother Eve is referring right back to creation. Being naked, you know, after they sinned and they realized they were naked, she was ashamed and hid herself. So with these people. So he said, these people too are like that. But this is what he said. I have heard it said that the Fiji men were void of shame and gratitude. So he said, you know, when I came here, I was told that these people, the Fijians, they are not shameful. They do things, but they are not ashamed of it. And they are not grateful for things that are done for them. So you see, what he's heard is what other people had written about the Fijians. But now he's living here, he's saying, forget about it. They are all lies. Don't believe what the other people, these are the missionaries who came and write about the original settlers of the island. He said, these people, when they do something wrong, they're shameful about it. When you do something good to them, they are grateful. They have gratitude. But before I came here, I had the direct opposite. You see, so somehow there's been they've been painting a wrong picture of not only the people of Fiji, but the Maoris, the Aborigines of Australia, the Solomon Islands, Tongans and Samoans. The wrong picture was painted by the missionaries themselves. He continued saying this. This I have proved to the contrary. All those things that I heard before I came are all lies. They have a great sense of shame and are grateful. If you are hungry, this is what they say. They will share their food with you without trade. They don't expect you to pay them. But you know they are traders. But if you are hungry or you are in need, they will help you, but they won't expect you to pay them without price. they would put the European to blush. He said, these people, because they are so grateful for things that they are given and they are willing to help, will put Europeans to shame because we want everything for ourselves. That's what he's trying to tell in his letter. That also can be found in that URL that we've talked about. This is the last thing that he said. Not the last thing, but he added this. In trading, they are perfect Jews. This is from this man, an American Christian. He said, these people are good traders. They are business-like. They are businessmen. But when you test their way of life, if you are in need, they'll give you, they'll help you, and they won't expect anything from you. But know that they are traders. Every transaction is through negotiations, through trade. And these people are just like the Jews of the Bible, the Jews of the Middle East, the Jews of Israel. That was in the 1800s. Let's move forward to 2 months ago, in the month of May, in Fiji. Israeli roving ambassador in the Pacific. On May the 10th, May, June, July, 2 months ago, the 70th anniversary celebration for Israel that took place in Suva, in Fiji Islands. This is what this man, he chose to come in and join the group who were there as Christians. They celebrated Israel's 70-year anniversary out there in the islands. This is what this man said. After they did everything, they invited this Israeli roving ambassador, come up and have a speech, address us and tell us about your nation. And this is what he said. I just extracted a few of his words for us that will apply to what we are studying now. This is what he said. There is a strong connection. What is happening here and the opening of the American Embassy. Remember, during that time to the American Embassy 2 months ago, they opened an embassy. They moved it from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, proclaiming that the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. It wasn't like that before. So he's saying there's a strong connection between what was happening here in Suva, in the capital of Fiji, and the opening of the Israeli embassy, the American embassy in Jerusalem. He's saying, we, Israel, won't be alone. People like you, the Fijians, will stand with us. So they say that we know that we are not alone, because Israel is right out there. When I was there, I heard that you guys will be having this celebration. The government of Israel sent me to come over to talk to you guys. They did not send me to go to Bainimarama or to Kayun, to the heads of government. They did not send me there. They did not send me to the conference head of the churches, whether it's the Methodist or the Catholic or whatever church denomination. They send me to the celebration here, where the common people, you, are, so that I can come and send you this message. This is, continuing with this speech, he said, you know what Fiji stands for? And he told them, Fiji, F, First Israeli Jewish Island. That's what came out of his mouth. He said the name Fiji means it's the first Israeli Jewish island. And then he continued, he says, you are my mothers. He looked at the ladies sitting there, listening, praising, and said, "You are my mothers. For you elders, you are my fathers. You are my brothers and my sisters." And then he said, continued, "They say we lost 10 tribes. Remember the 10 tribes we talked about that went to Assyria? He's referring to those 10 tribes, the northern nation. He's saying he comes from the southern tribe, the two tribes. Judah, he comes from there. But now he's referring to the 10 tribes, which was the northern kingdom or Israel. And he says, they say we lost 10 tribes 3,500 years ago. They went somewhere. He's referring to the Assyrians came and took them captive. They went somewhere. Few of them came here. You see what they in their research, they said that some of those 10 tribes that ran away from Assyria came to the islands of Fiji. He said some of them came here, in this place. And then he says, you are not the lost tribes. But he said, you are the founded tribe. You are not the lost tribe. You are not lost anymore. You have been found. We have found you. So, you see, what we have linked in the Bible is somehow confirmed by this Israeli ambassador. He's saying that the people there were the descendants of the 10 tribes. But we know better from the Bible itself. They were the last group that landed on the islands. The first group were the descendants of Javan. The second group were the dispersion from Jerusalem. They were Jews. The 2 tribes, the southern kingdom. And the third landing are the 10 tribes, which this ambassador is referring to. You are no longer the lost tribe, but you are the founded tribe. That's his own words. So Fiji, first Israeli Jewish island. That's according to this roving ambassador, what Fiji stands for. So we have lost a couple of things. Now come back to our own study. Let's think about the descendants of Javan and think of us today. We have lost a few things from this story. Javan's descendants were navigators. Remember, they had to leave Babel and travel the oceans to the isles that are far away. So they came over to Papua New Guinea, Australia, to the islands, Tahiti, Hawaii, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Fiji, then to New Zealand. So all these were navigators. They left the plains 4,500 years ago. They navigated their way. They navigated their way to and fro from the isles far away to Tyre, then back to the islands. They not only reached there and stayed there, they traded. They went back to Tyre and back to their islands. Back to Tyre and back to their islands. Different islands that we've mentioned. Where is that skill today? That navigational skills by our ancestors is no longer there. That's one of the things that we've lost when we look at the Bible records and look at us today. We've lost that navigational skills. I am glad to hear that there is a school bringing back this navigational skills by our ancestors that are teaching our young people to bring back these skills into their lives of today. What is the other skill we've lost? What is the other skills that we've lost? Javan's descendants were merchants. They were traders. They were business people. They took their wares back to Tyre, which was the trading center of old. So they came, they got their products ready and shipped it on those big canoes back to Tyre. You've seen where Tyre is on the map. I've shown you a little earlier. That's where they went to and back. Went to and back. And also, John B. Williams, remember, the consul in the 1847, he said that he noticed that these people were traders, our Fiji ancestors. That time, in 1847, they were still traders then. Today, Fijians have been overcome by immigrant races because they control the economy. Those who will come in later are controlling the economy of the country today. 99% of all businesses in Fiji are owned by other races, while Fijians are lost in their own land. That's our dilemma today. We have lost that skill, the trading, the business skills of our ancestors. We've lost it somehow. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. It says, this was the promise given to Javan and his people. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all of his commandments, which I command thee to this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, all these nations, the descendants of Javan, should be on top of the world, above all the nations. Only if we keep all of God's commandments. That's the counsel for us today. Why we have lost both these two skills? Because we are not keeping God's commandments. Not all of them. Things have deteriorated since the missionaries arrived into Fiji. You know, some say that light began to shine into the Fiji Islands when the missionaries came. It was darkness before that. But according to our research, it was light before that, but darkness started to come in after the missionaries came in. Why? We'll find out. Fijians have turned their backs to the religion of their forefathers. That was the cause of the wars, of those battles of those days. These people brought in the spurious Sabbath, which was the first day Sabbath. The original settlers had a Sabbath day, which was the seventh day Sabbath, according to the Bible. That was the cause of the friction, cause of the war. Remember, when these two landings came in, there was no battle. They just fall into place because they were worshipping the same God. But when the missionary came, they had to trick their way so that they can overcome those people who were resisting the false teachings that they brought with them. That's why they wrote up all those stories. John B. Williams said, Forget about all those that I've heard before I came. These people are good people. They will put us, white men, to shame because they are grateful for what we bring to them. They will help you and never expect you to pay them back. You see, there was light there before these people came. But when they came, darkness began to cover the whole island of Fiji. God, when Fijians turned their back on the religion of their forefathers, God will also turn his back on us. And that's exactly what happened. What has happened today. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 43 to 45, we will close with this verse. And I ask you to listen very carefully to what it says and think of what is happening in our beloved Fiji right now. Listen to this. The stranger, this is the same chapter which that promise came from. Deuteronomy chapter 28. Verse 1 was the promise. Now it's verse 43. The curse when you move away from the religion of our forefathers. It says, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. You will be overcome by those immigrant races that will come into the country. When you move away from the commandments of the God that your forefathers worshipped. Verse 44, he shall lend to thee, the stranger, and thou shalt not lend to him. Why? Because you don't have anything to lend to him. He will have control of everything. The economy, they will run the businesses of the country. And that's exactly what's happening in Fiji today. Verse 48 says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee. These are the curses. And shall pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed. That's where we are heading. Destruction. If we don't wake up in time and return to the religion of our forefathers, that's where we are heading. To total destruction. It'll take over everything from us on our own islands. And it continues to say, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God. You don't want to hear the voice of your God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. You move away from his commandments, this curse comes to you. We are urging Revelation 14:1, this ministry, urging all our church leaders in Fiji, return to the religion of our forefathers. Keep the commandment of God. You don't have to change your religion, change your denomination, but just change the day of worship. That'll be a good start. The day of worship that our forefathers brought with them from the plains of Shinar. The ones that brought with them from Jerusalem during that dispersion from Jerusalem. And the 10 tribes they brought with them. They all had worshipped on the 7th day Sabbath. Let's return to that. That will be our first step. And God will open up other avenues which will remove all this curse and take us back to victory and to eternal life. That is our urging to us today. Return to the religion of our forefathers. They were the descendants of Javan, the Jews from Jerusalem, and the lost 10 tribes. They all worshiped God on the 7th day Sabbath. That was the mark between them and Jehovah. Return to the religion of our forefathers. Revelation 14:1 is seeking that, humbly asking us as Fijians to return to the religion, the original religion of our forefathers, before the missionaries came in the 1800s. Let us pray.